the University of Toronto. Alexis Vegh is the coordinator of substance abuse programs and has worked with Springboard in various capacities since 2005, including a group counselling program for impaired drivers. She has also worked with the Toronto District School Board as an attendance counsellor and has been delivering Weed Out the Risk to TDSB students since 2013. In addition to a BA from the University of Toronto, Alexis has diplomas in Recreation and Addiction Counselling. Welcome to the both of you. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Colette. Okay, even though I am from Toronto, I'm a Sens fan too, so we want to move this along. But we do want to show you a program that we've developed for educating youth about the perils, the harms involved in smoking weed and driving. We call the program Weed Out the Risk. We developed it 3 years ago. We're from an agency called Springboard, which is mostly Toronto-based, but we do have programs around the province. So we've been delivering this program. It's a harm reduction program. It looks specifically at the issues related to smoking weed and driving. I mean, we know there are other issues with weed, especially for youth. We don't get into that. We talk about the harms with smoking and driving, and there's a lot of misconceptions, as Superintendent Johnson referred to earlier, that need to be challenged. It's a multimedia program, so I'm going to slip over to the media center area to help Alexis go through this. Right now we offer the program primarily to high schools in the Greater Toronto area, but we're looking to expand with some more private sector and public sector funding. We hope to expand this program around the province and who knows, maybe even around the country, because even though we've been running this for 3 years, you know, given the legislation that's pending, this is going to come up. The availability of weed for youth is going to be there, and it's still going to be illegal, right, for kids in high school. That doesn't matter. It's the availability is going to be there. So this is a web-based program. We access it in the various sites. We deliver it through the web, and it includes some videos, some activities, some games. We'll give you sort of a highlight of some of those things in the next short while. So, Alexis?
I'll be perfectly honest with you, this setup is a whole lot snazzier than I'm used to, so I have to wait for Don to get to the back so he can drive for me. I'm used to having a clicker, but it's not PowerPoint. So, as Don noted, we come at this from a harm reduction perspective. So ultimately we know that young people are smoking. We also know at this point in time, statistically, they're more likely to smoke and drive than they are to drink and drive. So in the presentation, the intent of it is to have a frank conversation about impairment and dialogue about impairment from marijuana in the same way that we dialogue about impairment from alcohol. Ultimately, Arrive Live, Mad Canada, those types of organizations have done a lot of this work around alcohol, and we have seen the drinking and driving rates reduced. And the intention is the same for this program. So we've had some sharing that has happened with other organizations. We use the Eggs on Weed videos that were provided by Arrive Live. And we tend to start with a little bit of humor. Again, I very rarely use the term marijuana when I do this presentation. Weed, kush, piff are my 3 favorite words for it. And we do that because, again, we are looking to have a very frank and open conversation, and in a lot of cases, young people aren't dialoguing in clinical terms. So, we do start with a little bit of humor, but we also try and temper that with some statistics. Again, the humor is to open up the conversation. The statistics are to ensure that we're having a good, frank conversation about it. So, go ahead, Ben. Oh dear, indeed. So, we'll just go ahead and go on here. Mr. Thompson, this we use, again, one of the, anecdotal things that I see in the classroom. Often parents are very comfortable having the alcohol and driving conversation and are less comfortable having the marijuana and driving. Whether that is because of the legality of it at this point in time, whether that's because they have use that they don't necessarily want to disclose, or they may not have used and don't have the information. So lots of potential reasons that the dialogue isn't happening. One of the reasons that we use Mr. Thompson, the crash happened on Highway 7 which of course for us in Toronto is a very tangible thing for our young people. The other reason we use Mr. Thompson is because that is a weed-only accident. Again, with high school users, we very often see poly use. So in that sense, it's clear for us. From Mr. Thompson, we go on to an Instagram. And again, we try and do some play-based stuff in here, just because it's important, again, for dialoguing with young people, for it to be sort of an interactive conversation. So there are 9 Instagram, Eggs on Weed is back.
Burrito run! Who's in? I want to do that! Let's run.
They're eggs on weed, and we all agree they've got no idea where this is going to lead.
I know what they say, but there are benefits to driving high.
Yeah, like focus benefits.
We're keeping it safe.
Wait. We're benefocused, man! Yeah. Is that a word? Yeah, because we're doing it right now. We're benefocusing. Hello. Hey, I'm so benefocused that I deserve like a medal or like a crown and a scepter or something with my name on it. Wait, what?
So again, putting those statistics in, so we're really getting into the root of the issue. I'll go ahead and play Mr. Thompson as well.
Stanley had died. I was driving around with Madison's sister, and I looked at her, and as a parent, I asked my daughter, I said, you know, where did your mom and I fail? Why did Stanley get in the car that night? She goes, you didn't. You know, you taught us well about alcohol and driving, but not about drugs.
Okay, so back to Instagram. So again, the play base is very important for us to have that dialogue. And the joy in a lot of cases is the interactiveness, especially if it's on something like a smart board, because there's touch learning that happens with that as well. But we go through these. The Instagram allows us to sort of unpack the knowledge in the room. There is about 2 hours worth of material within the Weed at the Risk program. And having delivered it for the last couple of years, I have everything from non-users who do not know what THC is to people who are talking Delta 8, Delta 9. So there can be a really large sort of breadth of knowledge within the room. The Instagram allows us to unpack that a little. So we look at things like the statistics of teenagers being more likely to smoke and drive than drink and drive. We look at the perception of slower is safer, and I think we talked about this a little bit, this notion that alcohol and speed, and the idea that if we drive slower, if people are high, that is inherently safer. So we unpack that myth. And again, you'll see we have the facilitator comments through there, so in the event that they want to sort of find out where the information comes from, we have it right at hand. We talk about the sort of myth that weed helps us concentrate. Again, this is something that often in the classroom I get people nodding, yes, absolutely. So what we really have to unpack in here is the loss of peripheral vision versus increased concentration. And then putting that back to the driving perspective of where are you most likely to have hazards that you need to track and that sort of thing. Talk about how it slows down your reflexes, and again, the sort of the affiliation between increased errors in driving and collision rates. We talk about burnout as well. In a lot of cases, people do not understand that there can be a longer-term impairment, and also with burnout, with it being one of the primary symptoms being drowsiness, we're concerned about making it very clear to youth that neither of those are particularly good options. We talk about lacing, and again in the traditional sense of other substances, but again in this section we go over some of the things that were brought up earlier today, things like potential pesticides, fertilizers, molds, those sorts of things. This is also in a lot of cases where we bring up the non-legality of the dispensaries, because in a lot of cases young people believe those to be authorized medical licensed producers. We talk about labeling and regulation, and again, if you are going from the black market and regardless of, or moving forward with legalization with the buy age being probably over that of a high schooler, we're looking at, in a lot of cases, people are not able to find out what they are purchasing. So from strain to potency, they're unable to sort of do their due diligence, and that's one of the things that we want to ensure that they have the information to make informed decisions. Again, we talk about polyuse and its effects on driving. And then we get into detection when it comes to police. So this is when we're starting to go over the new legislations, the new penalties. We're talking about the roadside detection that the police were speaking about earlier, and just advising people, especially young people, don't understand that it will not be a free-for-all. So in that sense, we're doing the compare and contrast with alcohol and explaining to them that those penalties are significant. From there, we go into potency of pot, talking about how pot has changed over time. So we go right through from what is a psychoactive substance, what are some of the different THC products that young people might be accessing at this point. And often we have to clarify some of those are relatively new. We also go over just the percentage of THC, so that they are aware that different products have different levels in them. So from a driving perspective, it is important for them to understand that. We also talk about the areas of the brain that are affected, and more than that, really it's coming down to explaining how the areas affected affect driving. So you can see we go through muscle movement, coordination, short-term memory, we talk about peripheral vision, time, those sorts of things. We also talk about the code classification, and again, how much we use senses to drive and ones that we don't necessarily think of. So again, looking at the bigger picture.
You are not thinking of driving, are you, my friend? Come now, Stuart. Reconsider. You're in no condition. Ring for a taxi. I'm telling you. Don't be a fool. I'm begging you. Trust me. You are high. Way too high.
One of the things that we really focus on in the program as well, in a lot of cases we are delivering to people who are not of driving age or who are of graduated driving age. The other thing that we really stress is the importance of this messaging for everybody, whether you are a passenger, whether you are a driver, whether you're a pedestrian or you're sharing the road. Ultimately, the discussion needs to be had by everybody. We use this next video, it's a TDSB video from Australia that highlights some of the main high driving behaviors that we typically see. So we have this this PSA, we have the young people watch it, and then we unpack some of the red flags when it comes to driving.
Yeah, right. Yeah. How about you?
Don't know really.
Yeah, we were talking about maybe going down to the pub and setting some bands or something to...
Yeah, that sounds good actually.
Matt, come on, get it going.
Yeah, can we start a bit more?
No.
Yeah, alright, come.
See ya.
Get the keys.
Well, there you go. Bye. This is fun. Oh, she's so cute. She's a good one.
Nice.
It's cool, babe.
You say some driving? Yeah,
Alright, Matt, make up your mind. Is it fast or slow?
So, we do acknowledge that by no means, I mean, we certainly do make driving errors when we're sober too. One of the things that we were really trying to highlight is impaired, you're more likely to make those mistakes in close proximity. So it's really about the risk. So just to give you an idea of how we unpack that, so the first sort of red flag that I highlight is, did anybody know what they were looking for as they walked down the driveway? And of course the answer is keys, and knowing where your keys are doesn't make you a good driver, but short-term memory certainly does. So highlighting things like shoulder checks and intersections, and how we know that there is some impairment of short-term memory when it comes to marijuana. So we unpack the rest of the driving behaviors that we see in that video, and again, looking at how they relate to impairment from marijuana. We talk about then from the statistical point of view, some of the statistics we know, and one of the reasons that we're sort of really wanting to have this conversation. 41% of teens have no problem getting in the car with somebody who's high. And I tell all of the people that I do the presentation to, this is the one time that I'm going to lie to you during the presentation. I can't do math, so I got to make that 20% because that becomes 1 in 5. That's a fraction I can do. But if we look at it, the next statistic tells us that 19% of young people under the age of 18 where we test weed as a factor in collisions. So, and we know that in a lot of cases that number goes up when we're at sort of 19 to 25, 26, and we saw that in some of the presentations earlier. We also acknowledge that by no means is this a youth issue. But substances aside, cars are a very, very risky place for young people. We don't condone impaired high driving in adults either, but my argument is in a lot of cases, young people are at more risk just because they are novice drivers, and in a lot of cases you may have people who are novice users. So in that sense, we are concerned additionally about the risk. Statistically, it's about a 3% difference that will drink and drive versus smoke and drive, and our hope is that this number will become the same. Impaired is impaired is impaired, regardless of whether it's drugs or alcohol. Again, we know in some places there are some significant challenges to things like transportation. So looking at alternatives and knowing what your options are in your area. Again, often young people are really good at knowing how to get home drunk. Fortunately, in a lot of cases, you get home high the same way. So looking at what those options are and ensuring that young people know what they are and their availability. One of the big things that we see is that young people believe that it's controllable and that they can turn it on and off in a way that they don't believe if they are impaired by alcohol. So that's one of the things that we really want to sort of challenge as well. This is the continuation of Mr. Thompson from the beginning. Again, we use this because it is a real life example and it's a tangible one for our young people.
They left the party, they went back into a local restaurant in the town of Perth. They ordered something to eat. The witnesses there tell us that they were smoking marijuana, they could smell it, they were high. When they left squealing their tires, headed for home. And home would be in Canada, so they went eastbound on Highway 7. And all the way through Highway 7, they were playing a little game of leapfrog with their vehicles until they got to this point.
So at arrived home, I checked my messages, and my best friend Dave had left messages inviting me to this party they went to. And there was still a seat open in the car. Luckily, I guess for me, I was at the cottage. It's unfortunate that he couldn't be with me then. But I had 2 other friends there. And they could have been in the cars too.
When you lose a child, it brings a whole different set of emotions that before you've had this type of experience, you don't even understand. It's a different kind of hurt, it's a different kind of loneliness, it's a whole different set of rules.
They were scheduled every 2 hours apart from each other, and I don't remember the order. it just seemed unreal. It's like you sit there, you go through a funeral of one friend, you go outside, take a break, and you go back inside for another. There's new family members come in, and it's a whole day of trying to remember, and by the end of it, you almost feel sick. It's, oh, what a waste of life. 5 youthful, energetic, full of potential young men that are now gone and that we would never see again. And trying to say goodbye to them all one day was very difficult.
And information that was given to us by some of the survivors was, no, they weren't drinking, but they had been smoking dope.
But what concerned me on one of the vehicles was the amount of narcotics that I found.
We had realized then that he was also the driver of the red Honda that had caused the accident. From all the information we'd been able to gather at that point in time, and spoke with the hospital staff. Yes, blood had been drawn on him because I knew marijuana had been a factor in everything that had been going on that night.
The one thing we were all hoping for was that there was no substance abuse factor. And when we did find out that there was a substance abuse factor, it made the situation even that much more difficult to deal with.
I was angry at first because I didn't know how to take it, I didn't know how to react to it. I thought it was the stupidest thing in the world. You know, like an accident's one thing, but it's just a really stupid decision. You know, 5 young, really awesome kids have to lose their lives because of that one stupid decision. And that made me really angry. Well, I mean, you can tell a teenager 500 different ways that it's wrong, but they already know that. I mean, they know the difference between right and wrong. My message would be to think for yourself, make your own decisions, be the big person.
Some of the people that drove up with him to that party made a great decision that night. They decided they weren't driving back with him because of that, and they got in another vehicle and they're alive today.
So, to finish up, generally we try and use the Jeopardy, although we're not allowed to call it that, so it's a pop quiz, in order to sort of go over the material, ensure that young people have sort of received the message and clarify any questions that are out there. So all the categories, all of the questions are actually from the program, and we can also use it as a review or a teacher can. So. On a smart board, for example, in a classroom, my favorite way to do this is, of course, staff versus students, and they can actually come up and interact together and dialogue together over the issue. And generally we finish up with our final thought, and here's often I'm playing devil's advocate at this point in time. We've talked a lot about risk, and one of the big things that we're highlighting is there's 2 ways to get rid of the risk. One is change how you party, the other one is change how you get home. Either one of those eliminates those risks. But we play devil's advocate on this one. This is an old poster that people may be familiar with, but we talk about, would you get on this plane? And generally, I may have 1 or 2, generally in the back row, who are absolutely. But most young people, it's a resounding no. So we just unpack the notion that, flying is always safer than driving, and we go over some of the reasons that it is. And then I say that if, you're sort of okay to get in the car, but you're hesitant to get in the plane, I really want you to sort of think about the rationale and why you're assessing the risk the way that you are.